Around 6 months before everything blew up, Jessica changed. She suddenly became obsessed with the gym, started buying new clothes, getting her hair and nails done constantly, and was glued to her phone. She took it everywhere, changed the passcode, and started sleeping with it under her pillow. When he casually asked why, she said it was so the kids couldn't delete important work stuff. Date nights disappeared. Sex went from a normal married rhythm to once every few weeks, awkward and mechanical. When he tried to talk about it, she snapped that not everything is about sex and blamed stress. She stopped saying, "I love you," replacing it with "you too," or nothing at all. Then came girls' nights. Every Friday, she dressed like she was going on a first date, but claimed she was helping her friend Madison through a divorce. She came home at 1 or 2 in the morning, smelling of perfume and wine. He felt the unease building in his stomach, but he still told himself he was overthinking. One Tuesday night, that changed. One evening, Jessica left her phone on the kitchen counter while she put the kids to bed. That alone was unusual. A message popped up from a contact saved only as M. He read the preview. "Can't wait to see you Friday. I'm already thinking about what I'm going to do to you." Another bubble came in. "Does your husband still have an OCLU? You're so bad." His heart started pounding. When she came back down and grabbed the phone, he saw a flash of panic on her face before she put on a fake smile and asked if everything was okay. He said it was, but that night he lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He decided he needed proof. The next day, he bought a small GPS tracker online and, when she was at work, attached it to her car. He also remembered an old iPad in her nightstand that used the same Apple account. When she wasn't home, he dug it out, guessed the passcode, their anniversary, and watched her messages sync. There they were, months of texts between Jessica and a man named Marcus. Sexts, promises, talk of hotel rooms, girls' nights that were anything but, and jokes about how clueless Tyler was. She wrote that she was planning her exit strategy, that Marcus made her feel alive, and that she was just waiting for the right time to leave. He took screenshots of everything, sent them to multiple backups, and tried not to throw up. On Friday, she took nearly 2 hours to get ready. Tight black dress, new heels, hair and makeup done like a date. She said, very casually, that Madison was having another rough night, kissed him on the cheek, and left. He waited 10 minutes, opened the GPS app, and watched her car travel not toward Madison's place, but to an upscale apartment building called the Meridian. He drove there and saw her car in the garage. 20 minutes later, she came out with a tall, fit guy in a suit. Marcus, laughing, his hand on her back. They kissed like lovers and drove together to a fancy Italian restaurant she had once claimed was too expensive and tiring for their anniversary. He sat in his car outside, watching them share wine and dessert, holding hands, kissing across the table. It felt like watching his own life being replaced in real time. After dinner, they returned to Marcus's building and went inside together. He waited in his car nearly 3 hours. Around 1:45 a.m., Jessica finally came out alone, dress and hair slightly disheveled, got into her car, and drove home. He raced home ahead of her and sat in the dark living room. When she opened the door, she jumped, startled. She asked why he was still up. He asked, in a flat voice, "How's Madison?" She said Madison was a wreck and that they'd stayed in, ordered pizza, and talked all night. "What kind of pizza?" he asked. She frowned and accused him of interrogating her. When he asked who M was, she lied and said Madison. When he calmly told her he'd followed her, watched her at dinner, and walking into the apartment with Marcus, he watched the panic hit, then disappear under a layer of anger. She started yelling that he was spying on her, that he was controlling and paranoid, and that this proved why she wasn't happy. When he pressed, she finally admitted she had slept with Marcus, then tried to minimize it, calling it a mistake and blaming him for being emotionally distant. He felt the last pieces of denial die. Something cold and clear settled in. He realized she wasn't just cheating, she was rewriting the story to make him the villain. That night, while she slept upstairs, he called his friend Dave in tears and asked for a divorce lawyer. Dave put him in touch with Patricia, a ruthless divorce attorney. At their first meeting, he brought everything: screenshots of texts, GPS logs, proof of hotel stays, and bank statements he'd dug out of Jessica's email, showing she'd opened a secret account and siphoned nearly $8,000 from their joint funds in small transfers. Patricia looked through it all and told him he had a very strong case: adultery, deception, dissipation of marital assets, and an affair with a former patient, which could get Jessica fired for ethics violations. She told him not to tip his hand any further, to act normal, keep documenting, and quietly secure their finances. At home, he played the role. He cooked dinner, tucked the kids in, and watched Jessica text and giggle at her phone, lying about long client sessions and emergency calls. The iPad kept syncing everything. In her messages, she called him pathetic, joked about him having no clue, and told Marcus she expected to upgrade her whole life once she had the house and the kids and child support locked down. Marcus bragged that his lawyer said she'd probably get the house and primary custody because she was the primary caregiver. He saved everything. When the timing was right, Patricia froze joint accounts and filed for divorce and an emergency custody hearing. The plan was to serve Jessica at work to send a clear message and to use the affair, the lying, the secret account, and the ethics violation together. Before the papers hit, Jessica approached him one night with a rehearsed calm. She said she had been thinking and that they needed to separate for the kids' sake. Her plan: she would stay in the house with the children for stability. He would find an apartment, and they'd do every other weekend visits with him paying the mortgage and support until she got on her feet. He asked if this had anything to do with Marcus. She tried to deny it. He told her plainly that he had all the messages, bank statements, GPS logs, and that he had already hired a lawyer. Her face drained. Then she exploded, calling him a psychopath, abusive, and threatened to take him for everything in court. He told her the house was in his name only, he'd bought it before they married, and that he was changing the locks once she moved out. Patricia had already filed an emergency motion to protect his interest in the property. Jessica left to stay with Marcus that night, cursing him and promising revenge. Marcus sent a smug text telling him he didn't deserve her and that children need their mother. He responded once, pointing out Marcus was sleeping with a married woman and wasn't the hero in this story. The next day, the process server walked into Jessica's clinic and handed her the divorce and custody papers in front of colleagues and a patient. She had a meltdown, and the office manager called him to ask what was going on. He calmly explained the affair with a patient. The manager realized it was a serious ethics breach and said there might be consequences. Within days, Jessica was fired. At the emergency custody hearing, Jessica expected to be believed as the default primary caregiver. Instead, the judge saw months of texts, GPS data, proof of the secret account, and evidence of the ethics-based firing. On the stand, he testified about the affair, the lies, and his concern about Jessica immediately introducing the kids to Marcus. Jessica's lawyer tried to paint him as controlling and paranoid, but the documentation was solid. When Jessica testified, she tried to frame it as emotional neglect driving her to make mistakes, and kept insisting she was still a good mother. Patricia confronted her with her own words, calling him pathetic, talking about an exit strategy, laughing about how clueless he was, and discussing taking the house and kids. The judge granted him temporary primary physical custody, ordered supervised visits for Jessica at a visitation center, and barred her from introducing the children to any romantic partners. Jessica melted down in court, screaming that it was unfair and that he had taken her babies. The judge threatened contempt. Outside, she screamed at him that he had destroyed her life. He told her calmly that she had done that herself. Marcus texted accusing him of cruelty. He ignored it. The first supervised visit was rough. Jessica sobbed in front of the kids and told them Daddy was keeping them from her, and the supervisor had to redirect her multiple times. The children came home confused and anxious. His daughter asked if he was being mean to Mommy. He documented everything and sent it to Patricia. Word spread. Jessica posted vague, self-pitying updates on social media about being a victim of a biased system and a vindictive ex. People quietly started doing the math, especially when Marcus made their relationship public and the dates overlapped with the marriage. Commenters called her out. She locked her profile. Behind the scenes, more karma rolled in. Through a friend of a friend, he learned Marcus was going through his own messy divorce. His wife had discovered the affair and was dragging him through court. His supposed wealth was mostly image: big car and apartment on credit, a mid-level job, not the firm owner he'd sold Jessica on. As money and stress piled up, Marcus' opinion of Jessica started changing. She'd moved in with him after being fired and losing the house, and he discovered she came with court orders, supervised visits, lawsuits, and constant emotional breakdowns, not just gym selfies. One evening, Marcus showed up on his porch, looking wrecked. He admitted he hadn't signed up for this level of drama, complained about paying for everything and being pressured to testify for Jessica and house the kids even though the judge had banned introductions. He said, "I think I made a mistake." The husband just told him coldly that it was his problem now, that he wouldn't ease up on custody so Marcus could have less stress. Days later, Jessica called sobbing. Marcus had kicked her out, putting her belongings into trash bags and telling her to go. Her father refused to take her in, saying she'd made her bed. She begged to come back to the house, just for a while, to sleep in the guest room. He refused. He told her that abandoning her family for an affair had consequences and that his job now was to keep the kids' environment stable, not to rescue her from the fallout of her choices. Shortly after, Patricia called. Jessica had suddenly dropped her attempts to change custody and agreed in writing to most of his terms. Primary custody for him, supervised visitation for her for the time being, no claim to the house, and a straightforward split of remaining assets. She was cornered and out of options. Then came news of another blow. Marcus's ex had filed an alienation of affection lawsuit naming both Marcus and Jessica and seeking tens of thousands in damages. Jessica had no way to pay. The affair was now costing her money, reputation, career, and her role as a primary parent. Months later, they returned to court for the final divorce trial. The same judge presided. Patricia presented the full record: the affair, months of lies, the secret account, the firing, the supervised visits, the lawsuit, and his steady care of the kids and continued employment. Jessica's side argued that she'd changed. She attended therapy, held a low-paying job as a receptionist, showed up consistently to supervised visits, and wanted more time with the kids. Her therapist wrote that she was taking responsibility and working on her issues. The visitation supervisor noted that after the first few weeks, she'd stopped crying in front of the children and focused on playing and connecting with them. On the stand, Jessica finally gave a fully accountable answer. She admitted she had destroyed the marriage through selfishness, that she'd prioritized Marcus over her family, and that she understood why she had lost so much. She said she wasn't asking for the house or spousal support, just for a structured chance to be a mother again. The judge weighed everything carefully. In the final ruling, she gave him permanent primary physical custody and both parents' joint legal custody. Jessica would remain on supervised visits for a few more months. Then, if she maintained stable housing, continued therapy, and no further incidents, she would graduate to limited unsupervised time, one evening a week and occasional overnights every other weekend. The judge denied Jessica's request for spousal support and left the house entirely with him as premarital property. Remaining assets were split in his favor. He was ordered to pay a small amount of child support, calculated off income difference, and primarily symbolic given his majority custody. Jessica cried in genuine grief and relief. The marriage was declared over. They walked out of court no longer spouses, just co-parents bound by a set of strict terms. About a year later, his life looked very different. He was a single dad with most of the parenting time. He'd created routines that gave the kids stability: school drop-offs, homework, bedtime stories, weekend activities. The house felt quieter, but also safer. The constant low-level tension, lies, and suspicion were gone. Jessica slowly stabilized at a lower rung of life. She rented a modest, clean apartment and kept the receptionist job. The alienation lawsuit and professional disgrace meant she wouldn't return to her old career anytime soon. People in town knew what had happened. She felt the judgment and distance from old friends. But she did keep working, going to therapy, and showing up for the kids on her allotted days. The kids adjusted. They loved their mom, but they also seemed calmer in the new routine. His daughter once said she liked it better now because the house was quieter and Mommy was less mad all the time. It stung, but it confirmed what he'd already sensed. Things had been broken for a long time before he acknowledged it. Every now and then, Jessica would apologize again, more subdued, saying things like, "I can't believe I threw everything away for someone who ran as soon as it got hard," or, You were a good husband. I just didn't want to see it." He believed she regretted it, but he also knew regret didn't erase what she'd done. Marcus faded out of their orbit entirely. New city, new life, a reputation scorched in his own circles. For Jessica, the upgrade had ended with job loss, supervised visits, lawsuits, and living in motels. The fantasy had turned to ash. Looking back, he realized a few things. He'd had gut feelings long before he had proof. Her phone habits, sudden physical reinvention, weird defensiveness, and vanishing intimacy weren't random. They were a pattern. He'd smoothed it over because he wanted the story of "we're fine" to be true. Cheating, he learned, wasn't just about sex. It was about systematic lying, gaslighting, and one partner secretly planning a new life while the other thought they were working through a rough patch. The betrayal was not only that she slept with someone else, but that she mocked him, used joint money, and tried to orchestrate an exit that left him with the bill and minimal time with his kids. He also saw how crucial it was that he hadn't exploded blindly. Gathering hard proof, staying calm, and getting good legal help early had changed everything. He kept his house, got primary custody, and made sure the kids' needs came first in the court's eyes. If he had just screamed and made social media posts, she might have controlled the narrative. As for karma, he stopped thinking of it as some mystical payback and more as a chain reaction. Long-term patterns of selfishness eventually colliding with reality. She lost her job because she violated ethics. She lost her custody position because she put her affair above her children's stability. She lost support from family and friends because she lied to their faces. She lost her affair partner because he only wanted the thrill, not the consequences. He got his own kind of revenge, but it was different from the fantasy. There were no triumphant one-liners, no dramatic final showdown where she begged on her knees and he walked away without a scratch. There was just a lot of paperwork, quiet nights alone, crying kids, and then, slowly, a new normal where he could breathe again and look in the mirror without wondering if he'd ignored the obvious. He learned to trust his instincts, to document instead of doubt himself, and to draw hard boundaries even when it made him feel like the bad guy in the moment. Most of all, he learned that his worth wasn't defined by whether Jessica chose him. He'd shown up, stayed loyal, protected his children, and when the truth came out, he'd stood his ground. In the end, the shock twist payback arc of his life looked like this. Shock, discovering the double life. Texts, GPS, hotels, the kiss in the restaurant. Twist, realizing she planned to take the kids, the house, and the narrative, and that everyone around them would believe her by default unless he proved otherwise. Payback, watching the legal system, her job, her affair partner, and reality itself close in on her choices, while he slowly rebuilt a calmer, more honest life with his kids. He didn't get back what he'd lost, exactly, but he got something in its place: clarity, custody, and peace, and the knowledge that when his world split apart, he chose his children and his integrity over ego and chaos.